Hello, everybody. We are ready to get started. I wanted to thank all of you for joining today, wherever you are in the world. We're so delighted to have you. My name is Jennifer Morris, and I'm with MadCap Software, and I am so thrilled to welcome our guest today, Michele Pighi, Information Architect and Technical Communicator at Ritech, which is a company in Italy specializing in technical communication, consulting, and training, and they're one of our valued partners there in Europe. So today's session is about optimizing a Flare project to produce a multilingual instruction sheet, which is often a requirement for many Flare users. Now, I had the pleasure of seeing what Michele is producing for his client from the talk that he gave at MadWorld last year, and we are so thrilled that you are sharing with our audience today. So welcome, Michele. Thank you so much for joining. Now, as always, we have so much to cover, so I have two quick items of business to review before we begin. Of course, as always, this webinar will be recorded. So we'll be sending out a link to everybody who's registered as soon as we're done, so you'll have a recording of this. Also, we would encourage you all to use the questions panel in the GoToWebinar console. So if there are any questions that are coming up as the presentation is going, please drop them in the questions panel. We're going to do our best to get to those questions at the end, and we'll get to as many as we can. If we don't get to your question live, not to worry, we'll be sending out a question and answer document to everybody who's registered as well. So you'll have a chance to review all the questions and answers, whether we got to them live or not. So with that, again, we have a lot to talk about today. So again, welcome, Michele, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to you.
Hey, thank you, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Michele, and I'll take you through this presentation about producing and maintaining a multilingual instruction sheet in MadCap Flare. Well, sorry, but I need to start by telling you something bad, something that well describes many technical documentation teams, which is the fact that every 5 minutes spent on content, a tech writer spends another 5 minutes doing useless stuff. Fortunately, with the right tools and skills, we can avoid it. So look at these numbers. This is an emergency, isn't it? In many cases, I've seen authors to do their work for just like 50% of their time, even less. The rest of the time is spent to do mechanical operations with very little added value, like inserting translations and setting proper layout features to the content and so on. Okay, the sentence in the previous slide was sort of a factoid, and this data, despite being absolutely true, needs some context that I'll give to you in a few minutes. We are talking about Flare today, so obviously we'll talk about how we can increase that writing percentage by using Flare. But first, let me quickly introduce myself to give you just some context information to understand why this presentation. I am like that Picasso character. I mean, who knows who I am? I'm an information architect, like Jenny said, and technical communicator at Ritech. I'm a MadCap Flare certified expert, trainer, and consultant here in Italy. And I love HTML, XML, and CSS. I'm talking about HTML and CSS. I think this has been the initiation of what I do most of the time now in Ritech. Studying and applying these languages made me a strong believer in structured information, which is fundamental in the technical documentation. And now I feel like I'm on a mission. I have a degree in linguistics and a high school diploma in electronics. And yeah, I'm a landscape and wedding photographer too, and a musician too. Just one little snapshot from Italy. Here you can see my beloved Dolomites in northern Italy. This is Lago di Carezza. If you're planning to spend some time in Italy, these and the tons of other locations totally deserve a visit. Just ask me. One last thing, I just need to talk about writing just a few words. So before talking about the main topic of my presentation, just a few words about WriteTech, which is good to know in order to better understand the context again of the case study I will present today. WriteTech is a technical communication consulting and training company since 1999. We make technical documentation 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So we write and organize information. We are MadCap software resellers in Italy, but more importantly, we use MadCap Flare for 90% of our documentation publication projects for any kind of technical document, as you will see today. We have customers in every market, so we see a lot of different scenarios, and we constantly need to find new ways to solve company-specific troubles. Among our customers, there are companies which want to use Flare to produce and maintain documents by their own in a new and more efficient way. Speaking about what matters most today, my Flare-related activities I typically do for customers are those you can see here. So content strategy, which basically means helping companies and more specifically technical documentation teams to find the best way to organize and distribute product information with all the involved users in mind. And I do a lot of document prototypes, which means understanding the content, recognizing information structures, and give them solid architectures to be easily formatted and to assure content reuse. This activity involves making project specifications with the authors in mind always. And last but not least, I'm responsible for Flare courses we provide to our customers. Okay, so let's go back to that shocking true story I told you about at the beginning. I told you that every 5 minutes spent on content, a tech writer spends another 5 minutes on useless stuff. Why useless? Because some operations can be automated. In those 5 minutes, the tech writer is not giving that added value he should give, he could give. But that sentence needs some context. So here I list the most frequent causes. That sentence is especially true when these conditions occur at once. The first condition is producing print-based documents, and it's obvious why print documentation is more likely to be paginated in the traditional way, that is, manually paginate the content depending on the volume and the content element size, so images and so on. The second condition is using a non-specialistic tool like Microsoft Word, Adobe, InDesign, and so on. They are great tools, but they are not the right tools for producing and maintaining technical documentation in most cases. Third condition is producing content to be translated, and this is strictly related to the previous conditions. I mean, dealing with translations could be painful when you manage content with non-specialistic editors and tools in general. And another condition could be producing content with a specialistic tool without knowing how to take advantages of some features. And this is especially true when the tool is difficult to use, obviously. So this presentation stems from a real case, a recent work for one of our customers, but it, I think, represents well many other works done in the past few years. The first 3 conditions you read here in particular were the starting point of this project. Tens of multilingual instruction sheets produced with InDesign. This brought the technical documentation team to spend a lot of time they could have invested in a better way. So why this presentation? First, because I think Flare is especially known for web-based documentation, but it has nice features for printed documentation as well. Features we use a lot to produce even complex printed layouts, as you will see today. Second, because back in the days, I would have liked to see examples of projects to produce multilingual printed technical documentation with nice layouts. So I thought that maybe there is someone out there like me who struggled to find examples like this. And third, because we should all automate those processes with little or no added value. And one more thing, before diving into the core of the presentation, just a quick disclaimer. As I said before, this presentation does not pretend to present the absolute right approach for you. The beauty of Flare, I think, is its flexibility and openness. You can do a lot of things in various different ways, and this is one way we choose in this specific case. But I think it's pretty interesting because you can see different kind of things in the process. So let's finally dive in. And I start with the customer requests. First, a request was to migrate 15 documents from InDesign to Flare to easily update them and produce new ones with ease. Second request, the layout no longer had to be a problem for authors. They needed to forget the layout and the formatting in general. We had some layout specifications to follow. A3 format, double-sided, 2 sheets maximum, and no folding constraints. And they needed 7 languages in each document, with 3 to 4 languages per sheet. You know, layouts in Flare has been for many years the thing that I was absolutely not confident about. I was not confident about Flare doing a good job in making beautiful, stable layouts. But this presentation also will show you that Flare can satisfy your graphical needs. There still are some missing features, but it definitely serves us very well in producing printed documents. Anyway, the first question I made to myself approaching this project was, is Flare the right tool? So let's examine the requirement list and see why I think Flare is and was good enough to satisfy them all. The request was easily make or update similar product documents. And it is Flare okay? Yes. With conditions and TOC reuse, the effort is minimal, really. The second request, layout no longer must be a problem for the authors, and Flare is okay because with style sheets and automatic content flow inside page layouts, you can do it. Third request, A3 double-sided, 2 sheets. Is Flare okay? Yes. All the features are perfectly manageable with page layouts. Last request, 7 languages flowing in a single double-sided document. Is Flare okay? Yeah, Mr. Griffin had some reasons to be worried, and why. I would say, generally speaking, Flare works at its best when you have a single language per project. It obviously depends on your needs, but this is generally speaking. A Flare project can have multiple languages in the same project. This case study is an example, and Flare can produce multilingual outputs, both for web and print. But for print outputs especially, there currently is one specific limit, which is a problem when you need more than one language in the same page layout. That content across different projects can't flow inside a single page layout. Every language would start with a new page layout. I mean, you would have a page for the Italian content, another one for English, another one for Spanish, and so on. So what? So the only way is to have all the source and target language content inside a single project. This could seem a problem thinking on how a typical translation process is with Flare. Anyway, you see that this is quite manageable if you prepare the project structure wisely. Plus, you can use some magic to make your life a lot easier. And we'll see what kind of magic I'm talking about. Again, this is a case study. It's not an academical approach to Flare. It's a real-world approach to solve some problems the customer actually had. This is the process that I implemented to provide a solution. We'll see some details for each of these phases. First, the analysis of existing documents to know the context, the critical elements, and the things that could be improved in Flare. Second, the content preparation, which means to modularize content into topics, snippets, and variables. We applied just some general guidelines of the information mapping method, but this project was more about content migration and Flare architecture. Content preparation means to apply conditions and so on. Maybe these are the most common things for you. Then redesign with some clear goals in mind. The first goal was to forget layout activities and therefore speed up publication. The second goal, forgetting or at least reducing the editor's discretion in structuring and formatting content to let them focus on the content. The third goal, making the documents easily maintainable, even in the most graphic sections. Okay, the fourth step, the layout test, because I didn't have the translated content, so I needed to emulate the final scenario to validate the document layout. And finally, structuring the project for translations and final publications. This is probably the most tricky part. So let's start with the analysis. This is one of the existing documents the customer gave us, front and back, with 2 languages. Here you can see just the Italian and English languages. It is aesthetically pleasing. It has 3 columns. A typical document you can only produce with InDesign, which is wrong, obviously, because you can do even better with Flare. The analysis involved to identify the various parts and the different kind of information in the document. I highlighted these parts. In violet, you can see presentational content that generally describes the product and the company, the names, the logos, the norms, and the company contacts. In yellow, images, always 4 images maximum. This is important to point out. In light blue, the main content, easy. In red, language breaking point with a product description paragraph. On the back, in green, those are standard text related to norms, always at the end of the sheet in that specific place. All the other documents were similar in structure, but had some variations. They had variations in content and volume, even if there was a lot of shared content between documents related to products with some common features. And they had content and image positioning variations because of the lack of structures and rules of the documentation team using InDesign, and they had different accent colors depending on the product family. The accent colors is used for some images, the logos, the table headers, and some other details here and there. So this is to say that these variations should have been managed in some way. to make publishing a smooth and automatic operation. And this could be done in Flare. So I produce this list of potential layout-related problems. Content varies in length. Side-by-side content like tables and lists set arbitrarily by the author. Images vary in quantity and positioning. Header elements manually positioned. Arbitrary language breakpoints positioning. Different accent colors, space constraints, and final content block always fixed in the last column, as I said before. The document parts analysis together with this list were so important because they gave me the guidelines to redesign the documents. I think it's necessary in this kind of works to have specifications and guidelines. It's vital. And I had to keep in mind that the customers wanted a layout similar to the original one. This list in particular was like a checklist to redesign things in a way that could make the author lives easier. And this is a summary of the first phase, the analysis. So we can move to the content preparation. I will be brief on this phase of the process because I think we are talking about some of the most common features that maybe you already apply every day. But I think it's good to explain you the entire process, and it is important to point out how I organize the content into language-specific folders. The first thing I did was to map product document features with condition tags. In a context like this, where I want to use one single TOC to minimize author operations, it is essential to apply conditional tags to the content based on product features, not on the product, I mean the model itself. Otherwise, every time I add a new product, I should review the content to apply the product conditional tags. So I use tags based on intrinsic properties like product features. They are future-proof. When I say based on intrinsic properties, I mean using names that exactly describe what the information is. Then I decided the main content modularization level. In this case, a topic includes a title and all the content before the next title, kind of block level modularization, speaking in information mapping words. I isolated into language-specific folders the topics that needed to be translated, and we'll see why this is necessary in this case. Then I isolated into snippets inside language-specific folders the small pieces of content I found. In this example, I have all the product descriptions in snippets. You can see the snippet content on the right. Why snippets? Because this kind of information will be positioned directly into the page layout, and snippets give you some extra flexibility in page layout. We'll see even this in a few minutes. Then I isolated into general topics or snippets the content that had not to be translated. For example, here you can see a topic containing all the images for the front page of the document. This way, the author finds all the images in just one place, so it is easy and fast to use. And then the last step, I isolated in variables all the common data, that is document data, product data, company data. But it is pretty obvious. So let's talk about design. I give you some insights about 4 major elements of the design, which are the main content flow, how I managed the positioning of some fixed elements in the layout, how I managed different accent colors, and how I managed images. The general advice here is keep things simple, which doesn't mean to make something roughly. It means to find ways to make the content easy to manage by an automatic publishing system. We need to achieve these results. First, it must be easy to update existing document and producing new one. Second, the layout should no longer be a problem for the authors. To keep things simple and maximize the benefits of automatic publishing, I needed to do this. There are some general advices which work well in many cases, I believe. The first one is to make the content element dimensions predictable as much as possible. To do so, use style classes, simple content structures, and layouts so that in designing you have a better perception of where content starts and ends. Even consider the text volume of some languages. Then limit layout cases and give clear specifications for exceptions. So, for example, avoid to have lists in one column and other lists split in multiple columns depending on how many list items you have. If you allow this, you are forcing the tech writer to think about the layout, but they need to focus on content. Another advice is to reserve a fixed space in the page for all the images. This way, your content can flow automatically without exceptions, and images are not variables in document length. The last general advice is to reserve fixed spaces in the document for extra information like document, product, and company data. So again, the content flow is perfectly predictable. And talking about the first design element, which is the main content flow, I needed to design a document divided into columns. You can make them with a single body frame or more body frames. Body frame is the main frame type in Flare in which topic content flows without constraints. The content flows in the frame until the frame ends, then it continues in the next body frames and so on. And this is the ideal solution when you want your content to flow automatically and in a predictable way, regardless its length. And this is how I designed the page layout in this project to keep things as simple as possible. In any case, test the space the text occupies before going further. Test it with your source language and consider translated content length for those languages that take up more space. Here, for example, I needed to consider German language. But let's see what is the look of the page layout I designed here. So I jump into Flare. And this is the page layout. I show you the initial document again, just for reference. This was the original one. And this is my layout in Flare. You see many elements, but let's focus on body frames, which are these two, this one above and this one in the middle. The first one is something we can ignore right now. It's where the product descriptions will appear in the final publication. The main part is this big body frame here. It's divided into 4 columns. It is straightforward. I just made a body frame and set the number of columns. The other thing I did here has been to reserve the first column to images. I show you again the original document. Here you can see all the images. And in Flare, this way I have reserved the first column to the images. This way I have a predictable column break before the main content starts to flow in the second column. And this is that easy as well. You just need something with a column break after the images, as you can see here. Okay, this is the TOC, and this page is where I have all the descriptions for the products that will go here in the first body frame. And then I have this topic, which is this one, the topic with the product description. Okay, here I have all the images. Okay, sorry, because I didn't find. Yeah, okay, yeah, this is the one with all the images. And if you look inside it here, I don't know if you can see my cursor below, you can see this paragraph at the end. And examining the code here, you can see, maybe I can zoom in, okay. You can see the inline style here. It's not the most clean way to do so, I agree, but it's just one case and it works fine in this context. As you can see, there is a column break property set to always. So when this paragraph occurs, the text flows in the next available column. I've also set the height of this paragraph to 1 millimeter, and this way it basically disappears in the final document. And this is all, to have the images in the first column and then go to the second one with the rest of the content. The next design tip is related to positioning. If you need precise positioning of some elements in the page layout, I give you this advice. Use decoration frames. This way you'll have a sort of live preview of your content and layout. Just a couple of notes. Don't overdo with this, because the more links, the more snippets you have and are stored in the page layout, the more the rendering becomes slow of the page layout itself. Another couple of warnings. First, conditions and variables do not resolve in the page layout. Second, the applied styles are those specified in the style sheet used by the primary target. As for topics in the XML editor, it just works as that. So keep in mind these two things. Anyway, for me, for this kind of layouts, using decoration frames is by far the best option to place content precisely in fixed positions of your layout. With this method, you can organize content in space intuitively and visually, thanks to the live preview. So you can avoid to set frame breaks in your CSS, and you don't need to build your target to check how those breaks are actually working. Okay, to do this, just add a decoration frame. Talking about snippets in page layout. So I go to this project. You can just create a decoration frame with this button, new decoration frame. I create one here, for example. Then you can press the F2 key to enter the edit mode and click no, because you won't simply add content inside the frame. Now I include a snippet just by drag and dropping it inside from here to here. It's a simple example with some text and just one image. And when I save the decoration frame, you can see the actual preview of the content based on the frame size and position and based on the document style sheet. I can move it. I can resize the frame and I can have a proper preview. It is sufficient in most cases to design the layout in an intuitive way. And you can see that it is even responsive. So the image is large as the frame. This for me has been a game changer. The next layout elements I talk about is different accent color. Talking about accent colors and brand style differences in general, you basically have two options to manage them. Using different mediums in the same style sheet, or using different style sheets. For who doesn't know what a medium is, it's basically a section in the style sheet where you can define specific styles in addition to the default ones, or styles that override the default ones. By default, Flare includes three mediums: print, tablet, and mobile in this case. Then there is the default medium, which is intended to be used for standard web output and for style rules which are valid across all the other mediums. The other mediums add specific style rules in addition to that default medium. So, for example, you can have headers 1 in black in the default medium, but you can have them in red in the print medium. Very powerful. Is a fundamental aspect of CSS. And to add a medium, open your style sheet and click on medium, then click on add new medium and simply give it a name. Talking about style sheet in general, maybe not all of you know that they can be linked together, resulting in the sum of the rules included in each style sheet. To link a style sheet into another one, open the second one, click on Style Sheet Links, then select the style sheet to link. I would say use mediums for what they are intended to be. That is, to define specific styles for different mediums or types of output. I mean PDF, Word, HTML, etc. Not for different brands. And I would say use different style sheets when your goal is to have different styles for the same type of output. This is why I chose the second solution, which gave me other advantages. The only two things that changes in these documents are sorry. Oh, sorry, I can't change the slide. Okay, it's fine. The only two things that change in these documents are three paragraph styles, which have different background colors. I simplified the original document, which had some differences in tables as well. That could perfectly manageable in Flare. And the text color changes from black to white in the light blue version. So I prepared one style sheet for all the common style, which is this styles common you can see here. And then I prepared three different style sheets, one for each accent color. Each of these three style sheets have a link to the common one. So in the end, all publications have a perfectly identical style set. The only differences are defined in these three specific style sheets, which are, for example, these two, styles inim 2 tag, styles inim 3 tag. I preferred this approach for two main advantages. someone with low skills on styles can easily update one of these style sheets to define a new accent color just by changing two style properties. You can see here they are just the background color and the text color, even inside the code. Adding mediums to achieve the same result implies more steps. This approach is faster and easier. And to me, this approach is even way more clean and secure in this case. All the common, never-changing rules are in one file. The exceptions are managed in other files in this specific color style sheet. So if the author makes some mistakes, it can happen, they will not affect the fundamental and complex common style sheet. And talking about images, which is another design element, I decided to have a dedicated section on each document, specifically the first of the 4 columns on the front page. To achieve this, I followed these general guidelines. Produce them with predefined dimensions to maintain image elements proportions across them. I am talking about the source image file. And simplify the image flow the more you can and optimize the space they occupy. But let's see how I manage them in the new design. Okay, on the left, you have two examples. On the left is the original one, and on the right, the new one made by me. The initial analysis led me to suggest to the author to arrange them horizontally rather than vertically. As you can see, the elements of some images were arranged vertically in the original documents. I mean, one under the other. They occupy space in vertical rather than horizontally. And the original image layout was incompatible with the bulletproof design I had in mind. Arranging them horizontally, all the images would have been in the first column, as you can see here, giving me a predictable content flow. And here you can see how 2 different documents look like in the image section. They look consistent. I'm referring to this one and to this one, and I perfectly know where they start and where they end. That is the first column of the document. I take this as an example to stress the fact that even if all these images have the same width, I use 3 different classes. And why? Because of their semantics. Get used in applying styles based on element semantics, not based on the style you want to achieve visually. I mean, those images are expressing very different information. Parts of the device, the visual field, and the connections. This is the best possible way to prepare for a future in which maybe the same documents will be produced in a completely different format, and you need maximum control and consistency of the various elements. And when you get used to it, you will never be able to do without it because of the feeling of having everything under control. The last thing I want to say about design, it's about auto-numbering. Obviously, don't worry about embedding numbering in source images. A style can manage it and it can look very good too. Here I want to give you something to play with. This is a view of the code to make image borders and auto-numbering. As you can see here, I show you the PDF. And as you can see here, I have this little number here, which is not in the source image, is given by style in Flare. And it looks identical in the second image and in the third image too, regardless the size of the image. As you can see, I just added a little padding and the border to all those images, which I selected based on their containers. So the containers was P struttura, P campo, P collegamenti, as you can see here in Flare, P struttura, P campo, and P. It's another different structure, and I select those images based on their containers. They are different paragraph classes. This way, I only apply one style in the editor for each kind of image because the style is given by the only one container, which is the paragraph. The paragraph gives the style to all the contained image, in this case, and in this case, and in this case. Three paragraphs and just a series of images inside them. And if the author needs to add a new image, he can do so without worrying about the style class at all. These little design details are everywhere in the style sheet because I had the user, the author, in mind. Anyway, going back to the core of this example, with an adequate padding at the bottom of each image paragraph, you can see here, I got the space needed to place the caption number, which is this paragraph class on the right. As you can see, I've set a negative margin to move up the caption paragraph exactly where I want it to be, as if it were a wall with the image and its border. Pretty simple but effective, and the author does not have to do anything. It's something that you can definitely apply to your projects, adjusting those units to match your document style and spaces. So hopefully it will be useful for some one of you. Okay, let's talk about the fourth phase of the process, which is layout test. This is pretty straightforward. I go fast on this, but I mention it to give you the full process. Here I worked on the Italian language, and I needed to simulate the final publication to test the content volume because I didn't have the translated content. So I used what I had, that was the source language content. I simply copied and pasted the source language book 6 times in the TOC, as you can see here, just to simulate the real content volume 7 times, sorry. Just remember to consider that some languages need more space. Then I looked at the PDF output and I took actions where necessary, reducing font size, line height, margins, and so on in the style sheet. And when the document looked good to me, I was ready to prepare the project for translation and final publication. And that's all about the layout test. It really depends on your content. So we are on translation and publication now, and this is the last phase of the process. I would say to the idea to easily maintain a multi-language project, you need to make the translation processes easy, the easier you can. The file selection must be fast and intuitive, the selection of the files to be translated, and the translation reimport in the source project should be hassle-free, and this is where Flare is not natively ready for a context like this right now. That is, it does not have a smart reimport feature for a specific multi-language scenario like this. So how I manage these translation processes. I grouped source language files to be translated in folders named with the same language label, IT for Italian, for example. This is necessary to easily re-import translations, as you will see in the next slides. For the first translation, I had all the content I needed. The layout was ready, and I could take advantage of the Italian source content to set the final publication. I mean, the target, the TOC, and so on, waiting for the translations. So I duplicated the Italian content folders, topics, and snippets 6 times to match the 7 languages. That was the number of target languages, and I renamed them using language labels, as you can see here. Then in the TOC, I applied the language conditions, you can see it here, to the different book, and I linked all the target language topics, which were not translated yet, obviously. To make this linking operation faster, you can use the multiple cursor feature in a dedicated text editor like Notepad++ or Visual Studio or other. I just needed to change the language label in the path of a talk page link. Just as a reference, as you can see here, I'm talking about this. So you can open a TOC, and as you can see, the link obviously have the language label inside. So with a code editor, you can remap all these books in one click easily. And I did this to avoid worrying about setting up the summary once the translations were back. So the project was ready from a technical point of view. It only needed the translations back. So with this file organization, selecting content to translate, with this file organization, that is different folders for different languages, is fast and intuitive to select the correct files for the various translations languages. And then when the translation returned back, it's easy to bring those files and paste them back in the original Flare project. You don't need to do nothing else, just overwrite the original files the old way. I agree this is a tedious manual operation, and that's why we decided to exploit the open nature of Flare. The IT guy in my team prepared a Python script which do this awful job automatically. As Thomas Bro Rasmussen said last year in Prague at MadWorld, make friends with the programmer in your team. In fact, it will solve all kinds of issues where the tools you use lacks. And this is an insight of the script we prepare to perform the overwriting. It's an example, obviously, but you can start from, it's an example you can start from to customize your solution. Maybe you can ask for some help from some of your colleagues who have the necessary skills, or you can ask me to if you need some further details. This Python script assumes that the translated files and the source project reside in known paths on your PC or local network. Basically, from row 7 to 12, which is this piece of code, we declare pair of values, the folder to copy to and the folder to copy from, and which is for English here, for German here. And then from row 14 to 19 is where the simple magic happens, telling the system to copy the files from one folder to the other one. You just need Python, which is free on your PC, and double click on the script, and done. Okay, if you need to update the content and translate it, what you must do in this scenario, you simply just need to create the new topics and snippets or modify the existing ones in the source language. And only with the new content files, you just need to duplicate them in every language folder in the Content Explorer. Then you need to update the source language book in the TOC, update other language books accordingly to the source language one, and then send to translation as seen before. And again, import translated content as seen before. With the script, is easy to have all the translated piece of content in the right position in the multilingual source Flare project. So just to show you the final result, which is this one, I have now tens of these documents. I can zoom in with the PDF, the actual PDF. I scroll down a bit just to show you how it is made. You have the product image here. You have all the basic info about the product and the company, and down here you have other informations about the documents. Then, as I said before, I reserved the first column to the images, which are auto-numbered with a proper style. Here, invisible, there's a paragraph with the column break, and then the source language start here with a specific accent color for this sheet. On another sheet, I would have a green color for all these accent elements. And the content flow till it find the new language, and it flow again automatically till the next language, and it flow automatically again. And then we have this piece of content here, which is fixed on all layouts, regardless the content volume. And that's the result. Just for reference, I will give you another quick view of the old one, which is a bit chaotic, I think, because it's really not predictable where content is, and it's and the author risks to do what he has in mind. It has some difficulties to write content and organize content in a coherent way, like you can do easily with Flare, with proper style sheet and a proper page layout set. And I go back to the presentation. Oops, I'm on the wrong slide, I think. Yep. Okay, so Jenny, I think it's your turn again.
Great. Yes, thank you so much. That was wonderful, getting some good comments that everybody's loving the version out of Flare. Good improvement over the initial, so well done. We are running out of time, but I do want to mention one quick thing, just as a reminder to everybody. Our learning conference, Mad World, will be in Austin, Texas this year, the 20th through the 23rd at the Fairmont, which is a beautiful location. You can save on an early registration discount. It's a hefty savings through the end of March. It's a wonderful way to take your skills to the next level, learn from other Flare users, network. If you haven't been to Mad World, I would encourage you to sign up. We will have our schedule for this year online, probably hoping the first week of February, so do check back. But if you want to take advantage of that discount, pop onto our website and you can register. I think we have time for probably one general question here, and it came up a couple times, and I think it's good to repeat for everybody, because we were talking about translation and localization. But the question is, what's the difference between translation and localization? Why is that important?
Okay. Translation, localization. These are two terms to say. I don't think I use both terms. Maybe yes, and it's not. It was not intended to be a difference between the two terms. If I use that, translations, it is the translation of content for the documents. Localization is more about software to localize user interfaces. This is as far as I know.
Yes. No, it's a good differentiator, and they can be two terms that are sometimes confusing when they're interchanged. So that's great.
Sorry if I used the two terms. It was intended to be just one, which is translation in this case.
Nope, it's no problem. Not a problem. It's a great question too. All right, well, I'm looking at the time. We want to be mindful of the time since folks are joining all over the world. We'll keep this question panel open for just about a minute longer. If you think of anything that you didn't get a chance to ask, feel free to drop it in there. I know, Michele, you're available on LinkedIn, so would encourage anybody who's interested to connect and perhaps ask questions there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this case study is plenty of little details here and there. So really, if anyone wants to know a bit more, just ask me on LinkedIn, or yeah, LinkedIn is fine.
Yes. Oh, and another point of clarification that was just offered too. Sometimes when we're talking about translation and localization, you know, we talk about English to French, but localization would be understanding, is it perhaps French Canadian or French from France? So sometimes there are little dialect changes depending on your locale, and so that's another differentiation between translation and localization as well.
Sure.
So I hope that was helpful to the person that asked. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for joining. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, and we certainly thank you all for joining. Thank you, Michele, for running through this presentation. It was very helpful, very well done. So thanks, everybody. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and we hope to see you on the next presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Take care.
Bye.